My family skipped my biggest moment. But when my $92 million valuation hit Forbes, Dad texted, "Family dinner at 7 p.m. Important discussion." I showed up with the documents that would end them. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and for 8 months, my family had been radio silent. They'd missed my Series B funding announcement with every excuse in the book. Dad had a golf tournament. Mom had a spa weekend. My brothers Jason and Tyler were too busy with real business to celebrate what they called my little tech hobby. But when Forbes published that my AI company, Nexus Solutions, was now worth $92 million, suddenly I was family again. The text from Dad was short and commanding, like he was summoning an employee, not reaching out to the daughter he'd ignored for the better part of a year. What they didn't know was that I'd been doing my homework on their precious family business, Lakeside Resorts. What I'd discovered would give me the power to either save them or destroy them. And after 8 months of being treated like I didn't exist, I'd already made my choice. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't getting mad, it's getting leverage. And I had more leverage than they could possibly imagine. The dinner at Grandview Country Club was everything I'd expected from my family: expensive, showy, and designed to impress rather than connect. They'd reserved the private dining room overlooking the golf course, the same room where they'd celebrated Jason's promotion to regional manager and Tyler's engagement to his college girlfriend, the same room they'd been too busy to book for my Series A announcement 18 months ago. I arrived exactly on time, wearing the Navy Armani suit I'd bought to celebrate closing our latest funding round. My family was already seated around the mahogany table, champagne flutes in hand, looking like a Norman Rockwell painting of successful American family life. "Sarah!" Mom stood up with theatrical enthusiasm, her arms spread wide for a hug that felt as genuine as a campaign photo op. "You look absolutely stunning, honey. Success suits you." Dad remained seated, but his smile was broader than I'd seen in years. "There's our little mogul. Come, sit down. We ordered your favorite, the salmon." The performance that would reveal exactly how calculated this reunion really was. Uncle Jeffrey, Dad's business partner in Lakeside Resorts, was there too, which should have been my first red flag. Jeffrey never attended family dinners unless there was business to discuss. He greeted me with the kind of firm handshake he reserved for potential investors. "Sarah, congratulations on the Forbes feature," he said, his voice carrying the forced warmth of a used car salesman. $92 million, that's some serious validation for your, what do you call it again? AI-powered logistics optimization for supply chain management, I replied, settling into the chair they'd left for me at the head of the table. Another calculated move, putting me in the position of honor while surrounding me with family. Tyler raised his champagne glass. "To Sarah, who finally made it big enough for the rest of us to understand what she does." The backhanded compliment that revealed they still didn't take my achievement seriously. Everyone laughed, including me, but the comment stung exactly as it was meant to. Even now, with a Forbes cover story and a 9-figure valuation, they still saw my work as some incomprehensible tech nonsense that had somehow accidentally made money. "So tell us everything, why?" Mom said, leaning forward with the kind of intense interest she usually reserved for gossip about the neighbors. "How exactly does one build a $92 million company?" I spent the next 20 minutes explaining Nexus Solutions, how we'd identified inefficiencies in supply chain logistics, how our AI could predict and prevent bottlenecks before they occurred, how we'd saved our clients over $200 million in the past year alone. Jason listened with the expression of someone trying to solve a math problem that was slightly beyond their capabilities. "But it's just software, right? Like you're not actually making anything physical?" "We're making efficiency," I said patiently. "We're solving problems that cost companies millions of dollars." "Right, but," Tyler jumped in, "it's not like you're building hotels or restaurants or something people can actually see and use." The dismissal that showed they'd never understood what I did, even with proof of its value. Speaking of hotels, Uncle Jeffrey said, steering the conversation with the subtlety of a freight train, that actually brings us to why we wanted to get together tonight. And there it was, the transition I'd been waiting for since I'd received Dad's text message. We have an opportunity, Dad continued, his voice taking on the tone he used for important business discussions, a chance for the family to work together on something really significant. Mom reached over and squeezed my hand. We know you've been focused on your own thing for so long, sweetie, but we think it's time to bring you into the family business. If you've ever had family members suddenly show interest in your success only when they needed something, you'll relate to what happens next. Drop a comment and tell me about your experience. I read every single one. The family business? I repeated carefully. You mean Lakeside Resorts? Exactly. Jeffrey's enthusiasm was palpable. Sarah, we're at a pivotal moment. The hospitality industry is booming. People are traveling again post-pandemic, and we have an incredible opportunity to expand. Dad pulled out a leather portfolio that looked suspiciously prepared for this moment. We're looking at acquiring 3 new properties in prime locations: beachfront in North Carolina, mountain resort in Colorado, and a boutique property in downtown Charleston. The total investment is about $4.5 million, Tyler added, his eyes bright with the kind of excitement I'd never seen him show for actual work. But here's the beautiful part, Jason continued, clearly rehearsed. We already have commitments for $3 million in traditional financing. We just need a bridge loan of $1.5 million to close the deals. The pitch that revealed this entire dinner had been a setup from the beginning. A bridge loan, I said slowly. From me. From Nexus Solutions, actually, Dad clarified. We'd structure it as a corporate investment with excellent terms, 8% interest, paid back over 5 years, with the option to convert to equity if you want to become a permanent partner. Mom leaned forward again. Sarah, this would be amazing. Finally, we'd all be working together as a family, building something that could last for generations. And, Uncle Jeffrey added with a grin, you'd be investing in something real, something people can touch and experience, not just algorithms and data. The casual dismissal of my life's work hung in the air like smoke from a dying fire. What I said next would test whether they truly believed their own sales pitch. This sounds incredible, Lati, I said, maintaining the enthusiastic tone they clearly expected. But I'd need to see the financials, of course. Due diligence is standard for any investment of this size. The brief exchange of glances around the table was so quick I almost missed it. Of course, Dad said quickly. We have all the documentation ready. Jeffrey brought everything with him tonight. Uncle Jeffrey patted his briefcase. Balance sheets, occupancy rates, cash flow projections, the works. Everything you'd need to see what a solid investment this is. What are the current occupancy rates for the existing properties? I asked casually, cutting into my salmon. Well, Jeffrey hedged, the industry has been challenging lately, but we're seeing strong recovery trends. What percentage? I pressed. It varies by season, of course. Average annual occupancy for the most recent completed year. The moment when their evasions would reveal the truth they were trying to hide. Jason jumped in, clearly trying to rescue his uncle. Sarah, you're getting too deep into the weeds. The important thing is the growth potential, not historical performance. Historical performance is exactly what predicts future results, well, I replied. In my business, we call that data-driven decision-making. Tyler laughed nervously. Come on, sis. This is family. We don't need to turn this into some corporate interrogation. Actually, I said, setting down my fork, when family asks for $1.5 million, it absolutely becomes a corporate discussion. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. If this family dinner from hell is giving you flashbacks to your own toxic family dynamics, smash that like button, because what I reveal next will show you how to handle manipulative relatives with facts instead of emotions. Sarah, Mom said in her smoothing over voice. I think what the boys are trying to say is that this is about more than just numbers. This is about family legacy, about building something together. Mom, family legacy built on bad financial decisions isn't legacy. It's debt passed down to the next generation. Dad's face was starting to redden. Sarah, I think your success has gone to your head a little. You're talking to people who've been running businesses since before you learned to walk. Running them how successfully? I asked. The question hung in the air like an accusation, because that's exactly what it was. Uncle Jeffrey cleared his throat. Sarah, maybe we should look at those documents now. I think once you see the numbers, you'll understand the opportunity here. He opened his briefcase and pulled out a folder thick with papers. Financial statements, property appraisals, market analyses, a comprehensive package that had clearly taken significant time and effort to prepare. But what I pulled out of my own briefcase would prove I'd done my homework too. Actually, Jeffrey, before we look at your projections, maybe we should look at some real numbers. I opened my laptop and turned it so they could all see the screen. I hope you don't mind, but I did some research on lakeside resorts after I got Dad's text. The silence that followed was profound. This is interesting, I continued, scrolling through the documents I'd compiled. According to public records, lakeside resorts' occupancy rates have been below 50% for the past 18 months. Jeffrey's face went pale. Where did you get that information? State Tourism Board publishes occupancy statistics for all registered hospitality businesses. It's public data. I clicked to the next screen. It gets better. According to your corporate filings, you're currently carrying $3.2 million in debt, with average monthly revenue of about $60,000. Sarah, Dad said, his voice carrying a warning tone. I don't think this is appropriate dinner conversation. But here's the really interesting part, I continued, ignoring him. Your debt service on existing loans is about $47,000 per month, which means you're generating just enough revenue to barely cover your loan payments, with nothing left for maintenance, marketing, or operations. The financial analysis that would expose their desperation for what it really was. Tyler stood up abruptly. Sarah, this is fucking ridiculous. We invite you to dinner and you come armed with spreadsheets like we're some kind of criminal enterprise? Sit down, Tyler, Dad said firmly, but his eyes never left mine. Sarah, how exactly did you access our private financial information? It's not private, Dad. Corporate tax records, loan filings, business registrations, it's all public if you know where to look. And I know where to look. I clicked to another screen. But this is where it gets really interesting. According to county records, you have 3 properties with a combined assessed value of $4.8 million. But you also have mortgages totaling $4.1 million, which means your actual equity is about $700,000. Jeffrey was gripping his champagne glass so tightly I thought it might shatter. Sarah, those assessments are outdated. Current market values are much higher. Are they? Because I had an independent appraisal done yesterday. I pulled out a document from my briefcase. Current market value, factoring in deferred maintenance and below market occupancy rates, is actually closer to $3.9 million. The moment when my family would realize I hadn't just done casual research, I'd conducted a full investigation. You had our properties appraised. Mom's voice was barely above a whisper. I had properties I was considering for investment appraised. Due diligence, remember? Dad leaned back in his chair, studying me with an expression I'd never seen before. Not pride, not disappointment, but something closer to wariness. So what exactly are you saying, Sarah? I'm saying that Lakeside Resorts isn't looking for expansion capital. You're looking for a bailout. The bridge loan you're asking for isn't to fund new acquisitions. It's to prevent bankruptcy on existing properties. The accusation hung in the air like smoke from an explosion. That's not true, Jason protested, but his voice lacked conviction. Isn't it? Let me paint a clearer picture. I pulled up another document. Based on current cash flow, debt service, and operating expenses, Lakeside Resorts will be insolvent within 6 months without significant capital injection. Uncle Jeffrey finally found his voice. Sarah, even if your numbers are accurate, and I'm not saying they are, this represents an incredible opportunity to turn things around. With proper investment and management, with my $1.5 million and my management expertise, I corrected, because that's what this really is, isn't it? You're not offering me a partnership. You're offering me the privilege of paying to save a failing business that you've mismanaged for years. The truth that none of them could deny because I had the receipts to prove every word. Tyler slammed his hand on the table, causing the silverware to jump. Jesus Christ, Sarah! We're trying to include you in the family business and you're acting like we're trying to scam you. Are you trying to scam me, Tyler? Of course not. Then explain to me why you presented this as an expansion opportunity when you're actually facing insolvency. Explain why you called it a bridge loan when what you really need is a complete financial restructuring. We were trying to present it in the most positive light, Dad said carefully. You were lying. The word that would finally force them to drop their masks and show their true desperation. Sarah, Mom said, tears starting to form in her eyes. We're family. Families help each other in difficult times. Are we family, Mom? Because for 8 months, you've all been too busy to return my calls, attend my events, or celebrate my successes. But the day Forbes publishes my valuation, suddenly I'm family again. That's not fair, Jason protested. Isn't it? When was the last time any of you asked about my business before you needed money from it? When was the last time you showed interest in my life before you needed me to save yours? The silence stretched uncomfortably as they realized they couldn't answer those questions. I'll tell you when, I continued. Never. You've never been interested in my success except as it might benefit you. And now you want me to throw $1.5 million at a failing business because we share DNA. Have you ever been in a situation where family members only showed interest in your success when they needed something? Tell me in the comments how you handled it. Your story might help someone else going through the same thing. Uncle Jeffrey made one last desperate attempt. Sarah, you're talking about abandoning family legacy. Lakeside Resorts has been in this family for 15 years. Your grandfather would be rolling over in his grave if he knew you were willing to let it fail. Grandpa didn't build Lakeside Resorts, I said quietly. Dad and Jeffrey bought 3 failing motels from a distressed seller 15 years ago and renamed them. There's no family legacy here except a history of poor business decisions. Dad's face was now completely red. That's enough, Sarah. You've made your point. You think you're better than us because you got lucky with some tech startup. Lucky? I stood up, my patience finally exhausted. I worked 18-hour days for 3 years. I mortgaged my apartment to fund the initial development. I pitched to 47 investors before finding one willing to take a chance on us. I built something from nothing while you were... What? Watching your occupancy rates decline? If this confrontation between a self-made entrepreneur and entitled family members has you cheering, hit that subscribe button because what happens next will be the ultimate reversal of power. You know what? I continued, reaching into my briefcase one more time. I think this conversation has been incredibly enlightening because I came here thinking you wanted to reconnect with me as family. Instead, I discover you want to use me as a bank to solve problems you created. I pulled out the final document I'd brought, the one I'd hoped I wouldn't need to use. But here's the thing about doing thorough due diligence, I said, placing the papers on the table. Sometimes you discover information that changes everything. Dad picked up the document, and his face went from red to white in the span of 3 seconds. What is this? He asked, his voice barely audible. That is a notice of debt acquisition. As of this morning, Nexus Solutions purchased the outstanding debt on all 3 Lakeside Resort properties from First National Bank. The revelation that would transform me from potential savior to actual owner of their fate. The silence in the room was so complete I could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the corner. "What does that mean?" Mom whispered. "It means," I said, sitting back down and folding my hands calmly, "that I don't own a failing business. I own your failing business, the mortgages, the operating loans, the lines of credit, all of it. I am now your primary creditor." Uncle Jeffrey was staring at the document like it was written in a foreign language. "How is this possible?" First National was looking to clear distressed assets from their books. I offered to purchase the debt at 80 cents on the dollar. It was actually quite a reasonable deal for them. Tyler's voice cracked as he spoke. "Sarah, what are you planning to do?" I looked around the table at these people who shared my DNA, but had never shared my dreams, my struggles, or my successes. The people who had dismissed my achievements for years, but wanted to claim them the moment they became financially valuable. What I said next would prove that sometimes the best revenge is simply good business. I'm going to do what any rational creditor would do with a failing debtor. I'm going to foreclose on the properties, liquidate the assets, and restructure the business under competent management. The word competent hit them like a physical blow. But first, I continued, I'm going to offer you the same deal you just offered me. I'm willing to sell you back your debt at a significant discount. Call it a family loan. You can buy back your own mortgages for the bargain price of $1.5 million. The reversal that would give them a taste of their own manipulation. Dad was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. "Sarah, you can't be serious." "I'm completely serious. You want to maintain control of Lakeside Resorts? Pay me $1.5 million and I'll transfer the debt back to you. Then you can continue running the business exactly as you have been." "We don't have $1.5 million, Jason said desperately. "Then I guess you understand the problem better now," I replied. "Asking family for money, you don't have to solve problems you created." Mom was crying openly now. "Sarah, please, this will destroy everything we've worked for." "Mom, you've destroyed everything you've worked for. I'm just the one with enough money to buy the wreckage." The truth that hit harder than any insult ever could. I stood up and closed my laptop. "I'm going to give you 30 days to decide. Either buy back your debt for $1.5 million, or I'll proceed with foreclosure and liquidation." "And if we can't raise the money?" Uncle Jeffrey asked. "Then you'll discover what happens when family loyalty runs into basic business reality." As I gathered my things, Dad found his voice one final time. "Sarah, if you do this, you're dead to us. You'll never be welcome in this family again." The threat that would prove they'd never seen me as family in the first place. I turned back to look at him, this man who'd raised me but never really known me, who taught me to work hard but never recognized when I did. "Dad, I was dead to you 8 months ago when you couldn't be bothered to return my calls. The difference is, now I have the power to decide whether you're worth resurrecting." And with that, I walked out of Grandview Country Club, leaving my family to face the consequences of their own choices. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction. It's simply holding people accountable for their actions and letting them face the natural consequences of their behavior. The drive home gave me time to process what had just happened. I'd gone to dinner hoping for reconciliation and discovered instead that my family saw me as nothing more than a potential solution to their financial problems. But I'd also discovered that I had the power to be exactly that, just not in the way they'd expected. Tomorrow would bring new decisions, new challenges, and the chance to prove that success isn't about getting revenge on people who wronged you. It's about building something so strong that their opinions become irrelevant. But first I needed to call my CFO and start planning the restructuring of Lakeside Resorts. Because whether my family bought back their debt or lost everything, I was going to turn their failing business into a success story. After all, that's what entrepreneurs do. We take broken systems and build something better. The next 30 days passed like a chess game played in slow motion, with each move carefully calculated and every counter-move anticipated. I'd given my family a month to come up with $1.5 million, knowing full well they didn't have it and couldn't raise it through legitimate means. What I hadn't anticipated was how creative desperation could make them. The first call came from Mom 3 days after our dinner. Her voice was strained, but still carried that familiar tone of maternal manipulation that had worked so well on me as a child. "Sarah, honey, I think there was a misunderstanding at dinner. Could we meet for coffee? Just you and me, mother to daughter?" I agreed, curious to see what strategy they'd developed. What Mom revealed during our coffee meeting would prove that my family's capacity for self-deception was even greater than I'd imagined. We met at a small cafe in downtown Charlotte, the same place where she used to take me for hot chocolate when I was little. The choice of location was deliberate, an attempt to trigger emotional memories and childhood loyalty. "Sarah," she began, reaching across the table to hold my hand, "I want you to know how proud your father and I are of what you've accomplished." "Are you?" I asked, because 8 months of silence suggests otherwise. "We've been proud all along. We didn't know how to relate to your world. Technology and algorithms and venture capital, it's so far outside our experience." The excuse that revealed they'd never tried to understand my world because they'd never respected it. "Mom, you didn't need to understand the technology. You just needed to show up, return phone calls, acknowledge that your daughter had achieved something significant." She squeezed my hand tighter. "You're absolutely right, and I'm sorry. But Sarah, what you're doing to the family business, this isn't you. You're not vindictive or cruel." "I'm not being vindictive. I'm being a responsible creditor managing distressed assets." "But it's our family business, your father's life work." "Dad's life work is 3 failing motels that he's mismanaged for 15 years. That's not legacy, Mom. That's just poor business planning." The truth that she couldn't argue with because the numbers didn't lie. Mom tried a different approach. "What would it take for you to reconsider? What do you need from us to make this right?" "I need you to understand that this isn't about punishment. This is about accountability. You asked me for money based on false pretenses, and when I discovered the truth, you accused me of being ungrateful and disloyal." "We were scared, honey, desperate. People say things they don't mean when they're backed into a corner." "Do they? Because what Dad said felt pretty authentic." "You're dead to us." That doesn't sound like desperation talking. That sounds like how he really feels about a daughter who won't bail him out. The conversation that would prove my mother was still trying to manipulate rather than apologize. "Sarah, what if we could guarantee repayment? What if we had collateral you'd accept?" I leaned back, interested despite myself. "What kind of collateral?" "The lake house. It's worth about $400,000, free and clear. We could sign it over to you as security for the loan." "Mom, that would cover less than 30% of what you're asking for. And besides, if your business fails, which all the data suggests it will, you'd lose both your livelihood and your retirement home." "Then help us make sure it doesn't fail. Come work with us. Your expertise, our experience. Together we could turn things around." The offer that revealed they still didn't understand why I'd been successful. "Mom, I'm successful because I built something from scratch in a field I understood, with technology I developed, solving problems I'd identified. You're asking me to save something that's already failed in an industry I don't know, using methods that have already proven ineffective." "But you're so smart, Sarah. If anyone could figure it out." "Intelligence isn't magic, Mom. I can't save a business that has fundamental structural problems just by wanting it to succeed." She started crying. Then, real tears this time, not the calculated emotional manipulation she'd used when I was younger. "Sarah, if we lose the business, we lose everything. The properties are our retirement plan. Your father is 62 years old. We don't have time to start over." The moment when my mother finally showed me genuine vulnerability instead of strategic manipulation. "Mom," I said gently, "why didn't you ask for help before it got this bad? Why didn't you call me 2 years ago when the problem started instead of waiting until you needed $1 million bailout?" She couldn't meet my eyes. Because we didn't want to admit we were failing. Because we'd spent so many years telling ourselves that your success was just luck, and asking for your help would mean admitting we were wrong about that. And what do you think now? I think we were wrong about everything. I think we raised an incredibly capable daughter and then spent years ignoring her achievements because they made us feel inadequate. The admission that I'd waited 30 years to hear, coming at the moment when it was too late to change anything. 2 weeks later, Jason called with a different strategy. He wanted to meet at my office, claiming he had a business proposal that would solve everything. I agreed, curious to see how his approach would differ from Mom's emotional manipulation. What Jason brought to my office would reveal just how far my family was willing to go to save themselves. He arrived carrying a briefcase and wearing his best suit, the one he usually reserved for important client meetings. His demeanor was all business, professional, confident, the persona he used when trying to close difficult deals. "Sarah, I want to present this as a straightforward business opportunity," he began, opening his briefcase to reveal a thick presentation folder. "I've put together a comprehensive restructuring plan for lakeside resorts that I think you'll find interesting." He spread the documents across my conference table like a lawyer presenting evidence. Financial projections, marketing strategies, operational improvements, competitive analyses. Someone had put serious work into this presentation. "Jason, this is impressive. How long did this take you?" 2 weeks of 18-hour days. I brought in a consultant, ran detailed market research, developed implementation timelines. Sarah, I think I figured out how to save the business. The effort that proved my family could work hard when their survival depended on it. I studied the documents carefully. The analysis was actually quite good, thorough, realistic, and based on solid market research. Jason had identified the core problems with their business model and developed specific solutions for each one. "You're proposing to convert the properties into boutique wellness resorts," I summarized. "Yoga retreats, meditation workshops, digital detox experiences." "Exactly. The wellness tourism market is exploding, and our properties are perfectly positioned for that demographic. Lakefront locations, peaceful settings, close enough to major cities for weekend getaways. And you've calculated the renovation costs at $2.8 million, which sounds like a lot, but the projected ROI is incredible. We could double our current room rates and achieve 90% occupancy year-round." I had to admit, the plan was solid. Jason had clearly inherited some of Dad's business instincts, even if he'd never applied them before now. "Jason, this is actually a viable business plan. Why didn't you develop something like this 2 years ago?" The question that would force him to confront his own role in their failure. His confidence faltered slightly. "Because 2 years ago, I thought we just needed to ride out the rough patch. I thought the problem was external, the economy, competition, changing travel patterns. I didn't realize we needed to fundamentally change our business model." "And what changed your mind?" "You did. Watching you build Nexus solutions, seeing how you identified market opportunities and created solutions, I realized I'd been managing decline instead of building growth." The honesty was refreshing, but it came 3 years too late. "So what are you proposing?" I asked. "Partnership, real partnership. You provide the capital for renovation and restructuring. I provide the operational expertise and hands-on management, 50-50 split on ownership going forward." The offer that would test whether Jason had truly learned from his mistakes or was just getting better at disguising them. "Jason, you're asking me to invest almost $3 million in a business that's currently losing money, based on a plan you developed in 2 weeks, managed by people who've been failing for 3 years. I'm asking you to invest in what we could become, not what we've been. That's exactly what venture capitalists say when they're trying to get funding for unproven concepts. But this isn't unproven. The wellness tourism market is established, our locations are perfect, and we have 15 years of hospitality experience. You have 15 years of experience running failing hotels. That's not the same thing as having the skills to run successful wellness resorts. Jason's professional demeanor was starting to crack. Sarah, what do you want from us? We're offering you genuine partnership, shared ownership, complete transparency about our mistakes. I want you to succeed, but I also need to be realistic about the probability of success versus the risk of investment. The conversation that would force us both to face the difference between wanting something and earning it. Give us a chance, Jason pleaded. 6 months to prove the concept. If we can't show significant progress, you can foreclose and do whatever you want with the properties. I considered his proposal carefully. The business plan was solid, but the execution would depend on people who'd already proven they could fail. On the other hand, the potential upside was significant if they could actually pull it off. Jason, I'll make you a counteroffer. What kind of counteroffer? I'll fund the wellness resort conversion, full renovation budget, marketing launch, operational capital for the first year. But I want 75% ownership, operational control, and the right to replace management if performance targets aren't met. The terms that would give them a chance to succeed while protecting my investment. Jason's face went through several emotions: hope, disappointment, calculation, and finally resignation. You're offering to let us work for you instead of with you. I'm offering to let you learn from me instead of repeating your mistakes. Jason, you've never successfully managed a profitable hospitality business. I've successfully built and scaled a complex technology company. Which one of us do you think should be making the strategic decisions? But it's our family business. It's a failed family business. I'm offering to turn it into a successful business that employs your family. 3 days before the 30-day deadline, Uncle Jeffrey made the final, desperate move. He showed up at my apartment at 8 o'clock on a Tuesday night, looking exhausted and defeated. This wasn't the confident businessman who tried to pitch me at the country club. This was a man who'd run out of options and dignity. Sarah, I need to talk to you, not as a business partner or a family member, but as someone who's about to lose everything he's worked for his entire life. I let him in, more out of curiosity than sympathy. What Jeffrey told me would reveal the full scope of their financial desperation. We've tried everything, he began, slumping into my living room chair like a man carrying an invisible weight. Banks, private lenders, investor groups, even those predatory payday loan companies, nobody will touch us. Because the numbers don't work, Jeffrey. You can't get financing for a business that's already insolvent. I know, I've known for months, but I kept thinking we'd find a way, that something would change, that we'd catch a break. He pulled out a flask and took a long drink, something I'd never seen him do in 20 years of knowing him. Jeffrey, when did you last have an honest conversation with Dad about the state of the business? Honest conversation? Never. Your father doesn't do honest conversations about failure. He does optimistic projections and confident assertions and elaborate explanations for why temporary setbacks are actually signs of future success. The admission that revealed the toxic dynamic that had been destroying their business for years. So you've both been lying to each other about how bad things really are? We've been lying to ourselves. I'd present him with declining numbers, and he'd find ways to explain them away. Market conditions, seasonal variations, one-time expenses, always something. External, never anything we could control. And you went along with it? I went along with it because facing reality meant admitting I'd wasted 15 years of my life on something that was never going to work. Jeffrey took another drink and looked out my window at the city lights. You know what the worst part is, Sarah? You figured out in 3 days what we couldn't face in 3 years. We're not entrepreneurs. We're not business builders. We're just two middle-aged men who bought some real estate and convinced ourselves we were creating an empire. The self-awareness that came too late to save them, but might finally allow for honest communication. Jeffrey, what do you want from me tonight? I want to ask you to give us the money, not as an investment, not as a loan, not with any expectation of repayment, just as a gift to family members who made bad choices and ran out of luck. The request was so nakedly desperate that it actually earned my respect. No pretense, no manipulation, no false promises of future returns. You're asking me to give you $1.5 million to keep a failing business alive for a few more months. I'm asking you to give us money so we don't lose our homes and have to start over at 60 years old with nothing. And what happens when that money runs out? I don't know. Maybe we figure out how to make it work. Maybe we find buyers for the properties who'll keep us on as managers. Maybe we declare bankruptcy and move to a retirement community in Florida. The honesty that was more compelling than any business plan could have been. I looked at this man who'd helped raise me, who'd taught me to drive and taken me fishing and shown up to my high school graduation when my own parents were too busy. The man who'd also ignored my success for years and tried to manipulate me into funding his failure. Jeffrey, I'm going to make you an offer, and I want you to think about it carefully before answering. What kind of offer? I'll give you and Dad $200,000 each as severance payments. Cash, no strings attached, yours to keep regardless of what happens to the business. In exchange, you sign over all ownership and management rights to me immediately. $200,000 each? Tax-free gift, properly documented. Enough to cover living expenses for 2 years while you figure out what's next, but not enough to enable you to keep making the same mistakes. The offer that would give them dignity while giving me complete control. Jeffrey was quiet for a long time, staring into his flask like it might contain answers. That's more generous than we deserve, he said finally. It's more than you've earned through business performance, but less than you've meant to me as family. I think that's fair. And the business? I'll convert it to the wellness resort concept Jason developed. I'll hire competent management and professional marketing, and if any of you want to work there in appropriate roles, not management but operations, you'll be welcome to apply. You'd hire us to work for you? I'd hire qualified applicants who happen to be family members. There's a difference. The distinction that would define our future relationship. Jeffrey stood up and walked to my window, looking out at the city where he'd tried and failed to build his empire. Sarah, can I ask you something? Sure. Do you think less of us for failing? The question surprised me with its vulnerability. I think less of you for not asking for help sooner, for lying to yourselves and each other instead of facing reality, for ignoring my success until you needed money from it. But not for failing? Jeffrey, I failed at dozens of things. The difference is, I learned from my failures and used them to build something better. You've spent 3 years refusing to learn from yours. 2 days later, Dad called to accept my offer. His voice was different, smaller, deflated, like a man who'd finally run out of fight. Sarah, we'll take the severance deal, $200,000 each, and we'll sign over the business. I'll have the paperwork drawn up today. We can close by the end of the week. There's something else I need to say. What's that? I'm sorry, not just for the business stuff, but for not being the father you deserved, for not supporting your success, for not understanding what you were building, for only reaching out when we needed something. The apology that I'd waited 30 years to hear. Dad, I accept your apology, but I also need you to understand that actions matter more than words. You can't undo 30 years of conditional love with one phone call. I know. I'm hoping maybe I can earn back some respect through different actions going forward. Maybe you can. We'll see. 6 months later, I stood in the lobby of the newly renovated Lakeside Wellness Resort, watching guests check in for yoga retreats and digital detox weekends. The transformation was remarkable. Jason had been right about the market potential. We were booked solid for the next 8 months with a waiting list for prime weekend slots. Dad worked in the gift shop, selling organic teas and meditation supplies to guests who didn't know he'd once owned the property. Uncle Jeffrey managed maintenance and groundskeeping, taking genuine pride in keeping the facilities pristine. Mom worked in the spa, helping guests plan their wellness programs and meditation schedules. She'd discovered a talent for listening and nurturing that had been buried under years of family drama and business stress. What surprised me most was how much they seemed to enjoy working for wages instead of equity. Jason had become my operations manager, implementing the systems and procedures we'd developed to ensure consistent service quality. He was good at it, better than he'd ever been as an owner trying to preserve a failing status quo. Tyler had declined my offer to work at the resort, choosing instead to start fresh with a small landscaping business. He sent a Christmas card thanking me for forcing him to find something he was actually good at. The success story that proved sometimes the best thing you can do for family is refuse to enable their failures. On the 6-month anniversary of our reopening, Dad approached me as I was reviewing occupancy reports in what used to be his office. "Sarah, I wanted to show you something." He handed me a bank statement showing a savings account with $8,000 in it. "I've been putting away money every month. For the first time in 3 years, I'm saving instead of borrowing." "That's great, Dad." "It's not much, but it's honest money, earned through work instead of extracted through manipulation." He sat down across from me, looking more relaxed than I'd seen him in years. "You know what I've learned working here?" "What's that?" "That there's dignity in doing a job well, even if it's not the job you thought you wanted. That security comes from competence, not just ownership." The wisdom that could have saved their business if they'd learned it years earlier. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Do you resent me for taking over the business?" He considered the question carefully. "I resented you for the first month, but now I'm grateful. You saved us from ourselves, Sarah. If you'd given us the money we asked for, we would have lost that too within a year. This way, at least we kept our dignity and learned how to be useful again." The gratitude that proved my tough love approach had been the right choice. As I drove home that evening, I thought about the journey from that disastrous family dinner to this moment of genuine reconciliation. My family hadn't gotten the bailout they'd wanted, but they'd gotten something more valuable: the chance to discover who they could become when forced to face reality. If this story of family business drama, tough love, and eventual redemption has kept you hooked, absolutely demolish that like button and subscribe for more incredible stories of people who chose accountability over enabling. Drop a comment about a time when someone's tough love actually helped you grow, because sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to make someone else's problems your responsibility. Today, Lakeside Wellness Resort is valued at $12 million. My family earns honest wages, lives within their means, and has found purpose in contributing to something successful rather than managing something failing. The lesson that success isn't about getting everything you want. It's about learning to want what you can actually achieve through honest effort. I kept my promise to provide them with work, dignity, and fair compensation. They kept their promise to show up, work hard, and stop expecting special treatment because we share DNA. Because sometimes the best gift you can give someone isn't what they're asking for. It's what they need to become the person they're capable of being. The girl who built a $92 million company learned that the most important thing money can buy isn't luxury or comfort. It's the power to hold people accountable for their choices and help them build better lives from the consequences. That's not revenge. That's transformation. And that's a legacy worth more than any failing family business could ever be.